Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Lisa Harwell, Jones Harwell, your host of Journeys with Jones Harwell. And as promised, this evening, Dave Ward Sr. is returning to the show. And our show tonight, I'm going to let him have the floor and just follow his lead. We are going to talk about safety. Safety in the workplace, safety in your home. It's now spring forward. Everybody has got their clocks to daylight savings time, spring forward. And normally now with spring, we're out and about because we've been in the house holed up during the winter months. So we're going to talk about safety. So welcome back, Dave. Tell
Thank you
us a
very
little,
much.
tell us a little bit about yourself for those that didn't catch you on the first time that you were on the show. And then let's get right to talking about safety.
Sounds great. First of all, I'm 6-year veteran of the United States Air Force,
Thank you
security
for your
police.
service.
Thank you. I also spent 23 years with the Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Prisons as a national safety examiner. Went through all the federal prisons throughout the United States and examined their health care, their food service, their Unicore factories, making sure that they met the appropriate standards.
Mhm.
And then I left the Bureau of Prisons and became a federal investigator for OSHA. Spent 4 years with OSHA in the Calumet City regional office there. And then I left there and started my own safety consulting business, Safety by Design Consulting Services. Did that for 7 years. I also worked for a company, Panduit, in Mokina, Illinois, for a short period of time. And then I joined with Century Insurance as their senior safety consultant, and I take care of Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, and any other state that they want me to go into.
Great. So, for those folks that are saying, okay, she's saying safety and he's talking about safety, why is safety? It's particularly in the workplace. Let's start with the workplace. So important.
Well, I mean, listen, people go to work every day and they operate equipment that could take their life in a brief second. So you have to have a habit of safety. Safety is a habit. If you're not safe at home, you can't switch it on when you come to work. So you have to look at both sides there. But it's extremely important in the workplace because, in the workplace, most manufacturing companies, most companies that produce,
Mhm.
their main concern is getting the production out, correct? So where
Correct.
does so where does safety fall? Normally it falls behind production, it falls behind quality. It's third or fourth on the list. Sometimes it's not even a core value
Mhm.
of the company. A lot of lip service, you know, but are we really protecting our employees? Are we giving the employees the appropriate safety protection needed? Are they getting the appropriate PPE? And as we've seen in this national disaster with COVID, you know, we can't even give our medical staff the appropriate PPE that's required. So, what do you think we're doing in the manufacturing companies?
Mm, mm. Good
There has
question.
to be a shortfall there. Something to make you go, if we're not protecting those who are on the front lines in the medical centers, so are we really giving the appropriate PPE for those who may be doing welding, those who are operating power presses, those who are, stamping and things of this nature? So it really kind of says, hey, what are we doing? Are we protecting our employees? Are we doing the right thing by our employees? They come to work every day. And if it wasn't for your employees, how successful would your business actually be?
Right, right, and that's a good topic. And I know, particularly right now, as you know, most of our white collar industry personnel are working from home and teleworking. So we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about them in a moment when we talk about safety in the house, because that also, goes to the business well too. But let's target and let's continue to talk about those industries that still require individuals to come to work daily because, hey, we need people in the grocery stores. We need people in the urgent
Absolutely.
cares. We need people in the fire department, the police department, in the courts,
In our meat
and
processing
manufacturing.
centers.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, exactly. So, what does it look like on a typical? Because I know OSHA is responsible for making sure that they put out the policies for safety within each industry. So, what would a typical walkthrough look at? For example, if a safety specialist was going through doing, I don't think audit is the word that I want to use, but an inspection.
Okay. Well, most people use checklists when they go through. Most people look at the block fire extinguishers, the block exits, and things of this nature. I actually look at finding the exits in some of the manufacturing companies. You can stand in the middle of the factory, and if you can't see the exits, then you should put some additional exit arrow signs up because that's tremendously important. Because if there was an emergency, where would your staff go? Where would the contractors go? Do they know how to get out? So emergency action planning is an is first and foremost.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
hopefully everybody's developed those plans from inclement weather to bomb threats to violence in the workplace. Now
mhm.
you have to consider that. So, there's so many things, but if you don't practice them, then what good are they?
Exactly, exactly. And what would you recommend that they do? Is it a quarterly participation or co-op procedure that they have to go through, or training that they have to go through, or is it like a monthly or quarterly, or how does most organizations do that? Because it seems to
Well,
be that some develop one standard of plans. Okay, we're just going to do this quarterly, and then some just, oh, I forgot, maybe we need to do this yearly. But should there be a quarterly, or should there be maybe every other month, or maybe every 5 weeks, or what would your
Well,
recommendation?
it's just kind of like the NCAA tournament right now. How you practice is how you play. And if you don't practice, you're definitely not going to play very well. And with
I
COVID
love
being
that.
yeah, and with COVID being right around the corner, there was teams that were unable to practice, and short practices and things of this nature. So, when you go to the court, how do you expect to really be efficient? How do you
Mm,
expect to really understand their roles if they don't practice? And in corporations today, it's just like we were talking here just a few minutes ago about production and quality. You
hmm
know, that's important. We got to get this product out that because that's how businesses make their money.
mm,
However, if we don't take the time
hmm
to do the simple things. It's getting back to the basics. It's kind of like a baseball team will tell you. We have to get back to the basics. You got to
right.
be able to catch a ground ball, field a ground ball, throw it over the first before you start making terrific plays in the infield, double plays, triple plays, whatever the case may be. You
hmm
have to be able to do the basics soundly, and yet
mm.
it takes time. So
Yes,
the
it does.
question is, yeah. So the question is are we able to get the employees off the floor to do the training? Are we able to stop the processes long enough to actually run a good fire drill?
hmm hmm
Do
And I
we
think,
even have go ahead.
yeah, and I know the last time that you talked, and most people may not know this, most organizations, large firms, I think probably know this, but for smaller firms, they may not know this. Is that they should always have a safety specialist that you mentioned, and it was quite interesting. I think the other day, I'm an entrepreneur, and I got something from the state of Maryland that said I had to put up the tag, a safety, tag. And I'm thinking, I'm a company of one, and where am I going to put it in my house? Because I don't have people that come to my house. But just
Right.
think, if you did have a shop, even if you were a one person shop, you still have to have those safety precautions posted where individuals can see them when they come into your place of business.
Well, it's not only that. Listen, if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business, I had a gentleman come to my opening and we were on the radio doing a radio broadcast as we opened up our business. And he goes, "Listen, I'd like to talk to you." He goes, "I'm a one man shop." And I said, "I don't care if you're a one man shop or a 100-man shop. You're just as important as that 100-person shop." And his concern was, "Well, how do I protect this one person?" I said, that's still a human being. If you're
Right,
employing them, you still have to do the right thing.
right,
And
right.
the right thing is making sure that one, they understand your expectations. Then you got to hold them accountable. Then you have to do the appropriate training,
Hmm.
and as a contractor, there are a lot of things you have to train on. You have to look at chemicals, you training on the chemicals, you got to look at fall protection, ladder safety, PPE, things of this nature. So when you're doing all that, you make sure that you read the standard, understand the standards, and what's a requirement that you have to meet. Now,
Hmm.
some people go out and turn around and do these manuals, like from J.J. Keller and other places, and that's great. However, if you don't ever read it and you're just filling in the blanks,
Hmm.
that manual has no value. And how
And
can
I
you
think
hold
it has.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think it also has to be applicable to that business because,
very
what
true.
you may write for someone else may not apply to your direct business. Is that true?
That's true to a certain extent, exactly. But if you don't, again, it's kind of like trying to hold somebody accountable for something they don't know. And how
Mm,
many companies really go out and read their safety manuals or have their employees trained on their safety manuals?
mhm.
Because then, if they don't know, how can you hold them accountable for
Right,
safety?
right,
And
right.
that's sad. I mean, that just sends up a red flag,
Mhm.
because safety should be a core value. It shouldn't be a priority because, as we know, we we do what every day with priorities.
They should be number one.
Well,
We change
priorities are
them,
changed
right?
every day.
And
Yes,
right,
but a core value, it should be a value that's never changed.
true.
You should have your value of your employees' lives should be paramount. And you shouldn't have to put signs up all over the place to tell everybody that safety is number one. And that's another thing we kind of do with companies.
Yes.
Companies put all these signs up, but if you put all these signs up, who's really paying attention to it?
Exactly, exactly. And
You know?
that just made a thought pop into my head too, as well. Something I don't think that we think of either is when you're, let's say that you're going to host an event, and you're looking at venues that you're going to use. I don't even think some of us think to ask those questions either. What happens in the case of emergency? How do we know to look for where the exit signs are and where things are, so if something happens, you can get your guest or get the participants out, in a timely fashion, in a timely manner. So it doesn't matter if it's, business, personal, fun, all of these things, all of these entities have to have, some type of safety plan in place that they practice, as you said, on a regular basis.
Well, just like in the summertime, look how many concert venues there are. And look what's happened recently when there's been some severe weather. And
Hmm.
we've had people killed. Why? Because we didn't have any emergency action plans in place. Emergency action plans are paramount.
Hmm.
Um, Especially in today's society. We look at the weather changes, just for instance. Look what happened in Texas. I
Yes,
mean, so
yes, with
are
that
we,
tremendous
yeah,
storm.
are we prepared? Do we have water? Do we have blankets? Do we have plastic bags? Do we have ice? Do we have food that could last 6 or 7 days in case of a disaster that hits?
Hmm.
And if we don't, then how are we really protecting our employees?
Right,
If our
right.
employees don't know where that stuff is at or located, then again, we're how you practice is how you play. And it's just like utility shutoffs. I go
Hmm.
into companies now and we talk about that. It's great that the maintenance people know where the utility shutoffs are, but how about if the maintenance people aren't there that day? Or how about if they're cut off? Does anyone else know how to turn off the water? Does anyone else know how to turn off the gas? Does anyone else know how to turn off the electricity or how to shelter in place?
Right, right,
And
right.
so we have a lot of trucking companies, we have a lot of highways, there's a lot of things on the highway that could happen. If
Mhm.
that cloud comes and moves over to your facility, how do you inform your people? How do you communicate that there's a disaster? Or how do you communicate that we have an active shooter on our premises? And
Mm.
again, it's all about pre-planning, taking the
Pre-planning.
time necessary.
Mhm.
Yes, taking the time necessary to do the right thing to protect our employees.
And
And that
I
goes
like
for all
this.
shifts.
Yes, yes, and I like this because, if people think to tie this in, like they tie in, change your batteries in your fire detectors, in your smoke alarms, and your CO2 detectors, like we do every spring and every fall. There should be some mechanic that it becomes second nature to us that we don't have to think about it. Go over your safety plan. So go over your safety plan at work, go over your safety plan at home. You know, it reminds me, like the airlines, that's the first thing the airlines tells you is when you get on a flight where all the exits are. When you go into a movie theater, the first thing they tell you before the movie rolls the first scene, is where the exits are. And it's normally funny because we're always doing, mocking the airline, steward or stewardess that, to the forward, backwards, to
Right.
the left, to right, but it should be the same, at home, where, because a lot of people don't think about it. You buy uh, a fire extinguisher, but it lasts. What's the life on a service fire extinguisher? How often
Again, it
can
all
you
depends on
change
what
that?
type. Yeah, it all depends on what type of fire extinguisher you have. Actually, do you even know how to use a fire extinguisher? Is the premise there. Or most companies now say, hey, listen, we don't want you to use a fire extinguisher unless you feel comfortable. But the most important thing is get out. And I,
Get
I
out.
agree with
Mm,
that because, a fire extinguisher is like a sprinkler system. You never know it's going to work until when?
until it works, till there's a
Un-
fire.
Until you have that emergency.
Right.
And then it might be too late because
Too
fire
late.
extinguishers leak.
Mm,
And if they're not checked on a monthly basis, now we're exposing our employees to maybe go rush to get that fire extinguisher, and that fire extinguisher may not even have anything in it. Why? Because it's leaked.
mm,
Or if you're using ABC or D fire extinguishers, do you have water? Do you understand that you shouldn't put water on gasoline? Do you understand that you shouldn't
right.
put water on electricity? So,
Right.
do you have those types of fire extinguishers? So, there's
Mhm.
the simplest, the basic things are
Mhm.
extremely important. It's just like working with chemicals,
Right.
bringing chemicals in to work.
Wow.
Are we the reason why they tell you to read the safety data sheet? Not only so you understand the hazards, but you might be allergic
To it.
to one of the chemicals or ingredients within that product. But you would
Right.
never
And then
know
you
if
use
you
it.
didn't
Right.
read it. Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah,
Exactly.
I live in a HOA, and we had a community meeting back the early part of February. And one of the interesting questions came up, and I'm not sure which homeowner mentioned it, but they were like, when's the last time that the fire department came by and checked the water hydrants, the fire
Y-
hydrants in the neighborhood? How often
Yes.
do they get flushed?
Right.
So again, another safety, concern.
Well, we have sprinkler systems throughout, most manufacturing companies. But here's a good thought process too, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's a plant in Michigan that changed their process. And what they had is the water sprinkler systems, but they were using magnesium, and the magnesium caught on fire. So
Oh my
when that
gosh.
water hit the magnesium, it blew the roof off.
And just made it 10 times worse.
Right, exactly. So you have to understand what you have in your facilities, and then if you change the process, you should get with the local fire department. Is this applicable to what we're
Mm,
doing now? Are
mm.
these fire extinguishers applicable? And again, in the same instance, we had a fire department go out to a facility, and it's always good to have them because one, it builds a great relationship. Two,
Yes.
they have a better understanding of really what's going on in your facility. And three, as you pointed out, the fire department connections.
Mhm.
Are they really applicable? Do they match what the fire department has? And there was one facility that had to go in and buy all new adapters because they found out that they didn't have the appropriate threads or the appropriate
Wow.
equipment. So it does happen. And I would strongly urge and suggest that if you are a company, no matter what size company you are, get the fire department out. Let
Mm,
them walk around with you. They can identify things that and hazards that you may not even be aware of.
mm. That's a good rule of thumb because as technology continues to change, we never know, like you just said, things that need to be updated, upgraded. So it would be a good practice to do that at least once a year.
At least once a year. Plus, it's just like having a mass drill exercise where there's injuries
Mhm,
because you want those ambulance people to have a good understanding of what's going on in your facility so they can be prepared when they respond. Because they're going to
mm,
ask, the fire department's going to say, hey, we need to see your SDSs, your safety
mhm,
data
mm,
sheets. We want to know what we're getting involved with. Same way with the
mhm.
medical staff. And, you might have gates that are locked to where the fire department or the ambulance service can't get in. If you don't have a safety professional that's actually directing these operations, then you might have other problems. I
Right.
mean, because, we have a lot of companies now trying to cut costs. So what
Mhm,
do? They either have a plant manager, a human resource person, an accounting person trying to run, have multiple hats and
mhm.
run safety. But my question to you would be, I mean, to them even would be, would you let a sanitation engineer manage your accounting department?
No,
I don't think so. So why
unless
would
he
you
had a
let
background in
somebody? Yeah,
accounting, but why would he be working sanitation then at that
right.
point?
So I mean, but you see this all the time, and we're
Mhm,
looking to cut costs. But my question to companies today would be, can you put a price tag on an
mm,
employee's life?
mm-mm.
Because that plant manager has a mindset of doing one thing, and that's production. That HR person is tied up in administrative holds every day. They're probably not getting out of the office to walk the floor to see what's going on in the first
Mm,
place.
mm,
And
mm.
then if you have a multitude of shifts, now you're having people that are exposed to many different hazards without anybody watching over them. And that's,
Right.
what does that say about your company? It's kind of
It
like
says you
new
don't care
employee
about your
training.
employees. Right.
Right. It's like new employee training.
Mm,
We hire people all the time, and what do? We put them in a room, we show them videos, and we have them sign 100 sheets of paper. Why? Because we want to get them out on the floor. That's what we're paying them for.
exactly,
But do
right.
we
Get to
give
work
them the
productive.
appropriate training? Right. Do we give them the appropriate training necessary to have, a good understanding of the hazards within their workplace? Probably
Mhm,
not. And what
probably not.
does new employee training say about your company? If you just rush somebody out on the floor, what do you think that employee thinks? Wow, I'm just another body. I'm a warm body
That's it.
collecting a paycheck,
That's it. That's it.
you know?
That's it. So let's pivot for a
So,
moment. So let's pivot from in the workplace, and let's talk about. I'm wondering, and this is probably not happening right now. While people are at home, I'm sure the redesign of the office, of course, is taking place in a lot of places because now you have to design it now for safety, more safety of 6 feet apart. But do you think that anybody is thinking to still do some type of safety drill, uh, even while people are teleworking? to still get them in the mindset of, um, you need to exit your house, you know, what's the safe way that you would exit your house, and then still call in. I don't think any of that is going on. But for a lot of us now that are working at home, how many of us have now really thought about having that practice plan in place of
Well, now that we're all
where the
working from
extra.
home, yeah, we're all working from home. Now we're bringing all this equipment to our homes. Now we've created a possibility where, well, one, ergonomically, are we even really doing right by the employee? Is the computer right? Is the chair right? Is the desk right? Uh, are we doing more harm than good? It's just like
Mhm,
people who work on the road and they go into the hotels. Ergonomically, we're expecting our employees to do work at night.
right.
Are they really ergonomically correct? So, it's just like being in a car.
Mhm,
We have a lot of people who drive for work, many,
mhm,
many miles, and are they ergonomically positioned in their car? And if not, we're just destroying that person's body. But you're right. At
yes.
home, what are we doing at home? I mean, fires happen at home, slips,
Mhm,
trips, and falls happen at home, just like they do at work.
mhm,
Housekeeping. Do we pay attention to the housekeeping at home? And I'm
mhm.
not talking about the dust or anything of that nature. I'm just talking about, the cords again, the chairs and things
Right.
of this nature.
Mhm,
You're going
mhm,
up and down stairs to where you probably wouldn't do it as much if you were at work. So the
mhm.
potential of slip, trips, and falls at the home have increased. But when we talk about fires, my goodness, just think, if you're a family and you have kids at home and you have a fire, uh, and you haven't done a fire drill, what an exposure. What are you
Yes.
thinking about? What are you going to say when you do have a fire and that child wasn't able to get out?
Mhm. Because
Mm.
normally they're always going the opposite direction than, than going out.
Right. Or you
So
turn
true.
around and you live on a second floor. Has anybody thought about going out and buying the ladders that go off to where kids
Exactly.
can open up the window, throw out the ladder, and
Mhm,
they could go down
mhm,
and go to safety? Have
mhm,
you actually, like you said earlier, have you checked your fire alarm system? Have you checked the batteries? Have you tested your smoke detectors? And
mhm,
now I'm just learning, and I've been in this profession for a long time, and everybody says, well, buy the multi units, to where you have the CO2 detector as well as the smoke detector.
mhm.
Well, and it's 10 years, but actually, if you really read the information on that, it says that the CO2 detector is probably only good for 5 years.
And I
So
think
it's
the last time we bought our home, because we've been here for a couple of years now, it was recommended to us that they be separate.
yes.
So, and then we had to make sure that we had one in each. So every bedroom, smoke alarm, and the CO at least two on the floor, you know, uh, and I think they even tell you two is based on square footage. Is that
Well, you
correct
definitely
too?
want to. I don't know if it's just the square footage, but you definitely want to have one where there's a potential of leakage, and that's in your basement for sure.
Mhm, mhm.
And then you want to have one up on each level of floor, right? As well as
Right.
your smoke detector, like you said, outside each one of the rooms.
Mhm.
And that's tremendously important. But again, if we never test them and we never practice, and you can't just practice during the day because you're probably not going to have that issue during the day. You're not going to have that fire issue or that incident happen. But you should practice at different times during the day, during the evening, and really early in the morning. So your kids and your family members know what to do. Are they going to
Right.
crawl out? Do they know how to unlock the doors? Because in
Mhm.
a state of emergency, what happens? You panic.
Right,
The
right,
simplest task
right,
becomes monumental then.
right. And then if you're not used to the sound, and you're coming up out
Yes,
of your sleep.
right. Yeah, I was just at a hotel actually and got into the hotel and at 1:30 in the morning, they had the alarms going off. And it's amazing that
How
people
many
just
people
came
left
outside
or
their
how many
door.
people just went back to bed?
That's yes. I had people open up the door and step out, but they
Oh
never
my
came
goodness.
downstairs. They never exited and people were congregating, but nobody knew what to do. The
Mm,
young lady, the attendant, she wasn't properly trained. She didn't know what to do, but it happens. We have young people the first time at work and things of
mhm,
this nature.
mhm,
So again, it goes back to training. Are we
mhm.
appropriately training our people? Because
Right.
those lives, I mean, when you're talking about a hotel, you're
Mhm.
talking about infants, family members, you're talking about people who may be handicapped.
Right.
So, how are you making sure that those people are being properly protected? How are
So
you
it
ensuring?
Yeah, so I would be curious in that case if the fire department did actually come out and respond and they didn't see a crowd in the parking lot. Would they find them?
Well, I think it would all depend on the individual jurisdictions for either the state or the county. I think it would definitely be something that the fire department would say to the company, "Hey, listen, don't you understand that it's your responsibility to make sure that we notify all the occupants of this building to get out?"
Mhm.
Because fire runs rapidly.
Mhm.
And if people don't know what to do in a fire situation, it's just going to grow quicker and quicker and
Mhm.
quicker, and
Mhm.
more lives we're going to lose.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's just kind of like in manufacturing companies. Who has the authority to call the local fire department when there's a fire, when we spot a fire? Or do we have to go through 10 different people to say it's okay to call the fire department out? And it's been 15 minutes. So, how far do you think that fire is gone in 15 minutes? The spread of that fire is just increased by tenfold.
Mm, 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 mm.
So, the quicker the response, the quicker the notification, the more positive the results will be.
My goodness. Have not realized that we have just been talking, talking, talking. I think, Dave, we've been on here an hour.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
This has been great. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad you came back. And I think I'm going to put you regular on the books for in the spring and in the fall, as long as I have this platform to still, because the knowledge that you bring, and maybe the next time we could have different conversations, and maybe you can make some recommendations. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you for your contact information if anyone else has any questions, whether it's to their personal home, how they should do safety, or if they need a business, consultant to get them on track to having safety specialists within their organization. I know that you said you manage in the Indiana, Michigan area, but your knowledge is applicable no matter whether it's in Indiana, Alaska, Missouri, Florida.
Yes, if there's
It's really.
anything I can do, right? If there's anything I can do to help anyone that's listening to this message this evening, please contact me at 219-669-9043, and I will be able to help you in any way I can. If nothing more, I will lead you in the right direction to get the appropriate information. If you have questions in regards to any of the OSHA standards, please feel free to reach out. And I have a number of people in my back pocket. If I don't know the answer, that I can get you the answers. So it's all about making sure that we save the lives of each and every one of our employees and stop as many injuries as we can, because it affects every family.
Yes, it does. It does. It does. As always, Dave, it has been wonderful talking with you this evening. I always enjoy the conversation that we have. You always enlighten me on something new because this is second one we've had. But as we're talking, I'm still steadily thinking of new things to think. Because you don't. You just think of those general.
Right.
Okay, I'm at work and I'm at home. Okay, but then we don't think when we're in the car, when we're at a social event, gathering, whether we've planned it or whether we're going in attendance to a show or a concert, or a ball game. Just how important safety is 24/7. It's just not an 8 to
Just
5, it is a 24/7.
it's like CPR. CPR for your company, CPR for your home. We touch 1,000 people's lives every day. And how many people really know CPR? How many lives do you think we could save if everybody would just take the time to get trained? How many infants' lives could we save?
Mm,
You know, we're having an elderly community. We're getting
mhm,
older every
mhm,
day,
mhm.
and things happen, and it only takes a second for somebody to have a heart attack or to pass out or to get hurt. Do you know how to respond? So if you're listening to me tonight, make sure you get trained in CPR. It's a life saving, it's a life changing event. And if you don't have AEDs at your company, please get them because they will save someone's life.
And for
And there's not
someone
a
that's
price
not
tag in the world.
right, if someone's not familiar with what that acronym stands for, can you let us know what that acronym
Yeah,
stands for?
it's automated external defibrillator.
Okay.
Okay. And if you're a large company, you should have several of them. If you're a small company, you should at least have one.
Hmm.
And
And I know normally
strategically,
placed in they normally placed. I know in the last government agency I worked in, they were placed at every elevator, so you could find one at every elevator. Every elevator,
okay.
they had an AED there. Hmm.
And that's again, it all depends on what kind of facility you have. If it's an administrative facility, you may want to put them on the outside of where the elevators are. However, if it's a manufacturing facility, again, how long is it going to take you to get from one part to the next part? And if it's more than 3 minutes, you should definitely have an AED within that thing. The
Oh,
time
okay.
is of the essence. It's just like CPR.
Hmm.
Time is of the essence. And if you don't want to breathe, then just do that compressions. Compressions will save a life. I've been there, I've done that.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. As always, the one thing that we didn't talk about again, so I've got to have you on again, but let's wrap
Absolutely.
up. How are you going with your book? Are you finished with it?
I'm finished with the book. Hopefully you can take it from here and we can we can move on, and I sent it out to a couple other people to read to get a forward on it. And as soon as I get those forwards, I would love to work with you and get this thing published because
Thank
I
you.
think it could make a tremendous impact for every company.
Yes, yes, indeed. And I look forward to helping in any way, shape, and form that I can because like I said, it is not an 8 to 5. Safety is a 24/7 because
Yes.
it only
Yes.
takes 1 second to change the dynamics of somebody's life if you're not prepared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well put. Well put.
Well put.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it. This is going to conclude our segment of Unapologetic on Journeys with Jones Harwell. Stay tuned. I'm going to take a hiatus for a week. I probably will be doing something live next weekend from New York City. Not promising,
Ooh,
but I might, with one of my special guests that was early on, El Chanel, and her platform from Holy. from the hood to holy. So that will probably be next Sunday. I'll do a brief pop in. On March 31st, we're going to talk to Gerald Moore and his platform of teaching young Black men about technology. He's got a fantastic platform. So if you can reach us, come on and spend some time with us on March the 31st for that. But as far as for now, this evening, as I mentioned to Dave earlier, I have some Peruvian chicken. My stomach is ready for it, so I'm going to eat. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Sunday
Absolutely.
evening. Thank you again, Dave, for gracing us on the show, and you all have a good night.
Good night. Thank you again.